In the yellow light of a lonely patrol light, the young officer crouched down next to the motionless body of a young woman. Her face was calm as if she were sleeping, her eyes half closed, her clothes still neat, not a trace of a misalignment. But that silence did not carry the breath of peace. It was the cold void of death. A few hours ago, no one knew that this would be the place where the life of Malaysia Booker, a 22-year-old transgender woman of colour, had once stepped onto the stage with only one arm in a white bandage to talk about her own pain. This time I can still stand here, but next time, it might be someone else. No one expected that this haunting warning would become a prophecy of her own fate just a month later. To understand why a courageous icon like Malaysia ended her life on that deserted street, we have to go back in time, back to the life she lived. A short journey, but shining brightly like a candle against the darkness of prejudice. Malaysia was born and raised in Dallas, Texas, a bustling city but full of hidden darkness. From a young age, she carried a different energy within her. Even though the world looked at her with skeptical eyes, Malaysia was confident, strong, and always knew how to speak up for herself. She loved beauty, not just the makeup on her face, but the beauty in the confident eyes of the person looking in the mirror. That is why she dreamed of becoming a makeup artist, using her skillful hands to bring smiles to others. Those who have met Malaysia remember her as a source of positive energy. In the ballroom community, where gay, transgender, non-binary people gather to celebrate style and identity, Malaysia shined. Not just because of her looks, but also because of her courage. There, she found a second family, a place where she could be herself without fear of judgment. Her mother, Stephanie, always stood behind her daughter to support her. She knew that society could be cruel, but she also knew that her daughter was strong enough to withstand the storm. In the eyes of her friends, Malaysia was not only a friend, but also a safe haven, someone who made them feel heard. However, with every light comes darkness. And that darkness came in April 2019. That day, Malaysia was driving in the Royal Crest Apartments area when a minor collision occurred. Instead of the usual calm exchange of information, the atmosphere quickly turned violent. In the crowd, someone shouted, "Whoever hits him, I will give you $200, just because Malaysia is transgender." That challenge turned the crowd into a stage for a brutal act of violence. Edward Thomas, 29, rushed in, pushed Malaysia to the ground and punched her repeatedly in the face and head. The punches rained down like a vent of anger, while many others joined in, kicking, stomping, cursing. The crowd around cheered, laughed, many raised their phones to record, turning her pain into entertainment. When the video went viral, the whole of America was outraged. Malaysia was hospitalized with a concussion and a broken arm. But a week later, with bruises still on her face, she took the stage at an anti-violence protest. Her voice was calm but determined. "This time I'm still standing here, but next time it might be someone else." No one expected that someone else to be her. It was this moment that turned Malaysia into a symbol. A victim dared to stand up, dared to speak openly about her fears and hopes. But the light also attracted unwanted eyes. She became known to the public, but at the same time, she became a target of prejudice and hatred. On the night of May 17th, 2019, Dallas was quiet under a thin layer of fog. Malaysia appeared near her home, chatting with a few acquaintances. Someone saw her get into a light-colored sedan. That seemingly ordinary scene turned out to be the last time anyone saw her smile. Hours later, a passing motorist on Valley Glen Drive stopped. In the glare of headlights, he saw a small, motionless body. His heart pounding, he called 911, his voice trembling. "There's a girl. She's not moving. Come here now." When the police arrived, everything was quiet. There was no sound except the radio in the fog. Malaysia's phone was neatly placed a few feet away. There was no sign of a struggle, no scene of chaos. Everything was too peaceful, unnaturally peaceful, as if someone had chosen this very place to end things without leaving a clue. The young officer didn't know who the girl was, but that face, seemed to have appeared on the news before, and a cold feeling rose in his heart. This was not a random murder. Someone, somewhere had planned it all. The question now was not only who killed Malaysia Booker, but also why did a girl who had bravely stood up to violence die this way? And it was that silence, that moment of unanswered questions, that opened up an investigation full of contradictions and mysteries. There are many other details behind this incident that will leave you speechless. If you find it worth listening to, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next part. In the cold detention room of the Dallas police station, a young officer sat staring at a computer screen. On it, a blurry video appeared. Weak street lights, a light-colored sedan gliding through the night, the driver's silhouette unclear. The time displayed in the bottom corner, 1:45 a.m., less than an hour after Malaysia Booker's body was discovered. The clicks paused, zoomed in, rewinded. All that appeared was a fragile piece of the puzzle, but enough to make the officer's heart beat faster. Because, a few hours earlier, the last witness to see Malaysia alive had confirmed. She got into a light-coloured sedan. The police divided the investigation into two directions. One team searched for traces at the scene, the other followed Malaysia's phone data. From the initial information, her phone had moved with another device on the night of May 17th, until both signals went dead. The name of the owner of the other phone immediately alarmed many people. Kendall Lyles. To outsiders, Lyles was nothing special. A 33-year-old man living quietly in a small apartment in North Dallas with no criminal record for murder. But as they turned the pages of their past, the police realized a darker picture. Lyles had been arrested for illegal possession of weapons, numerous times for being involved in fights and drug use. More importantly, he often appeared in areas where transgender women worked or gathered. To the police, it was no longer a coincidence. Meanwhile, the LGBTQ+ community in Dallas had not yet recovered from the shock of the video of Malaysia being beaten by a group in April. They were shocked, angry, and now immersed in grief. "Can we just stand by and watch, then wait our turn?" A friend of Malaysia choked up in front of the media lens. Back in the investigation room, each detail was slowly put together like a puzzle. Witnesses said they saw Malaysia leave the group around 11 p.m., getting into a light-coloured sedan. Phone data confirmed that her device was travelling with Lyles until both disappeared. The blurry video at 1:45 a.m. showed an identical car passing by the area near where the body was found. All of it, though not conclusive, was like invisible fingers tightening around the name Kendall Lyles. Malaysia's friends also recounted unpleasant memories. They had seen a strange man appear several times in places she often visited. No one knew who he was, only remembered that his eyes followed Malaysia persistently, unpredictably. She once told a relative that she felt uneasy, as if someone was always watching from behind. But who? She did not say. During the investigation, the police also found a detail that made them shudder. Malaysia's phone was placed neatly near the body, not broken, not thrown far. In most murders, the scene is usually chaotic, objects scattered everywhere. But here, everything was too orderly. It gives the impression that someone deliberately set out to erase the traces, turning a murder into an unsolved death. The officer in charge of the case wrote in the report, "This cannot be considered a spontaneous act. The perpetrator calculated, chose a time and place with few cameras, and knew how to erase traces, but he forgot one thing. In the modern world, every phone is a silent witness." Fear crept into the community. A close friend of Malaysia exclaimed, "If even Malaysia, who dared to stand on stage with a face full of scars, is not safe, then who among us is safe?" The question echoed not only in the hearts of her friends, but also in the minds of investigators. They began to look at other possibilities. Was there a connection between the April assault and the May death? Or were these two separate events just a creepy coincidence? Edward Thomas, the man who beat Malaysia, was arrested. but quickly asserted that he had nothing to do with the murder. Indeed, the police verified his time and location and ruled him out as a suspect. But that did not ease the community's suspicions. For them, the line between related and unrelated was too thin, when they all stemmed from the same root: hatred for transgender people. When information about Kendall Lyles leaked out, public opinion flared up again. Why was a man with many violent convictions still able to move freely? Why did no one notice that he often hung around the most vulnerable places? And more importantly, why was an icon like Malaysia, who had spoken out publicly, not properly protected? Those questions were like cuts, piling up on the pain. Meanwhile, the police quietly continued to collect evidence. DNA traces, location data, conflicting statements, all gradually painted a portrait of the person who put Malaysia in the fateful car that night. But the real motive remains shrouded in mystery. Was this a grudge murder, or a secret relationship that Malaysian friends never knew about? Or simply a wrong choice in a fateful moment? On the night of May 17th, what really happened in that light-coloured car? The answer remains unanswered, but each small clue is gradually leading the police closer to the truth. And at this moment, when the investigative net began to tighten, another unexpected event occurred that took the case in a new direction. An event that no one could have predicted. On the morning of June the 5th, 2019, the sky over Dallas was grey, as if a storm were about to strike. In the coroner's office, officers sat around a data sheet spread across a screen, each piece of the puzzle now connected into a clear picture. Malaysia's phone moving in tandem with another device. Witnesses claimed to have seen her get into a light-coloured sedan. Cameras recorded a similar car passing by the crime scene. And above all, the name Kendall Lyles repeated itself in every trace. An emergency arrest warrant was issued that morning, because the police had no doubt Lyles was not only involved in Malaysia's death, but also in several other violent incidents around the same time. But before the police could act, a shocking report came. Days after Malaysia's death, there had been 2 shootings in East Dallas. The suspect? Kendall Lyles again. Witnesses claimed to have seen him appear near the scene, then disappear into the night. The name was no longer associated with death, but seemed to be a wandering ghost, spreading fear everywhere. That made the police calculate carefully. Lyles could be carrying weapons, and if cornered, how dangerous would he be? A plan was meticulously drawn up. Surround his apartment at dawn, when the possibility of resistance was lowest. The small street where he lived was sealed off in silence. Officers in bulletproof vests, guns ready, stood waiting for orders. When the door opened, the man stepped out, his eyes still drowsy, but alertness flashed immediately. Lyles did not resist, just coldly let the police handcuff him and take him away in the darkness of the pre-dawn morning. In the interrogation room, Lyles kept silent more than answered. When asked about the night of May 17th, he gave vague answers. "I don't remember. I was just driving around. I didn't know her." But each statement was contradicted by phone records, body cameras, and witnesses. The contradictions were self-incriminating. As police patiently sifted through the files, bigger questions arose. Why was Malaysia Booker, an icon who had recently stood up against violence, targeted? Was this a random killing, or a bloody message to the community? In Dallas, the LGBTQ+ community took to the streets. They held up pictures of Malaysia, cried, and chanted her name. "Justice for Malaysia!" echoed through the streets, becoming a rallying cry for a generation that refused to be silenced. Meanwhile, investigators began to unravel Lyles's entire past. They uncovered a long string of violent acts for which he never paid the ultimate price. The altercations, the threats, the appearances in sensitive areas, all of them sketched a portrait of a predator, lurking in the city, hiding behind a normal appearance. What haunted them most was the question, If the legal system had acted sooner, would Malaysia still be alive? Among friends, pain mixed with remorse. "We used to tell her to be careful, not to go alone," said a relative tearfully. But Malaysia always believed that by being true and brave, she could change the way others saw her. Now I wonder, did that bravery make her a target? Although the evidence was mounting on Kendall Lyles, his motives remained unclear. Police found no signs of robbery. Malaysia's clothes and belongings were intact. There is no clear evidence of a personal relationship. So why? That question hangs over the interrogation room like a shadow that refuses to be lifted. Was Malaysia murdered because she was a transgender woman of colour, a symbol of standing up? Or was there another secret between her and Lyles that the world has never known? The only thing that is certain is this. Malaysia Booker got into a light-coloured sedan on the night of May 17th, and from that moment on, her life took a turn that would never return. But what really happened in those final hours inside that car? The answer, to this day, remains locked in the mind of a man named Kendall Lyles. In the Dallas Forensics Lab, cold fluorescent light cast a pall over small but heavy pieces of evidence. A cell phone, a few pieces of fabric, traces of gunfire. Each detail was examined under a microscope because experts knew it could unlock the mystery of Malaysia Booker's death. The first shocking piece of evidence was GPS data. Malaysia's phone and Kendall Lyles's had been travelling in nearly parallel tracks for hours before Malaysia's signal suddenly disappeared on the night of May 17th. That couldn't be a coincidence, an officer asserted in the report. Then a traffic camera captured a light-coloured sedan leaving the area where Malaysia was found. Though the image was blurry, the licence plate matched the car registered to Kendall Lyles. Meanwhile, new witnesses began to speak. A friend of Malaysia recalled seeing her with a strange man that night. Tall, thin, wearing a dark jacket. When the police showed Lyles's photo to the witness, silence fell over the room. The man nodded, his eyes trembling. Yes, that's him. But the final blow came from the forensic results. Under Malaysia's fingernails, experts found traces of DNA that matched Kendall Lyles. A small detail, but enough to paint the final picture. Malaysia had resisted, and in the moment of life and death, she had brought evidence to accuse the killer. Faced with the undeniable data, Lyles remained silent. In the interrogation room, he sat motionless, his eyes fixed on the table, his hands clenched as if he were imprisoning himself. The police laid before him a thick file. Photos, data, witnesses, DNA, but instead of confessing, he just sighed. "I didn't kill her. I don't remember anything." That statement, half denial, half ambiguity, made people even more suspicious. In the community, outrage exploded. They no longer saw this as an individual case, but as a hate crime, targeting Malaysia just because she was a transgender woman of colour. Many human rights organisations asked the police to expand the investigation in this direction. Marches continued. In people's hands, signs with the words, "Stop killing trans women. Stop killing transgender women." Because Malaysia is not the only case. In 2019 alone, across the United States, dozens of transgender women of colour were murdered in similar circumstances. Malaysia Booker is now not just a victim, but also a symbol of an entire movement. At the same time, journalists, lawyers, and Malaysia's family all want to know one thing. What was Kendall Lyles' true motive? Investigators analysed call records, text messages, social media, but there was no obvious connection between Lyles and Malaysia before that day. No animosity, no acquaintance. Just a cold fact. They had been in the same place, on the same night, and only one had come back alive. A theory gradually formed. Lyles may have approached Malaysia for sexual purposes, but when he discovered that she was a transgender woman, he became angry, leading to violence. This theory has not been confirmed, but in many similar cases, the tragedy has played out exactly according to this scenario. If that is true, Malaysia Booker's death was not only a murder, but also the result of prejudice, discrimination, and hatred that still exist in society. As for the family, the pain is deeper and deeper. Malaysia's mother choked up in an interview. "I lost my daughter, but what hurts me the most is knowing that she was killed for being true to herself. I want justice, not just for Malaysia, but for all the children like her." While all the evidence points to Lyles, the law needs more to convict. Prosecutors still face a challenge, turning the pieces into a complete, convincing story in court. And while they rush to prepare their case, Kendall Lyles remains behind bars, silent. The secret of the night of May 17th still tightly held. But then something unexpected happens, turning the case from a personal tragedy into a national sensation. In October 2020, nearly a year and a half after Malaysia Booker's death, the Dallas courtroom is packed. Media are present. LGBTQ+ people hold signs with Malaysia's image, while her family sat in the front row, silently clasping hands. In the dock, Kendall Lyles appeared in an orange prison uniform. His face was cold, showing no emotion. But in the eyes of the hundreds of people present that day, he was no longer an unknown name, but the man who took the life of an icon. The prosecutor opened the trial in a steely voice. Malaysia Booker did not die in an accident. She was murdered. And the evidence shows that only one person is responsible, Kendall Lyles. Piece by piece, the phone data, the traffic cameras, the witnesses, the DNA results. Each piece of evidence was like a hammer hammering down, driving Lyles into a corner. The defense attorney tried to argue that there was no direct witness to Lyles doing the killing, that the DNA could have come from another contact. But the weight of the evidence combined with the emotional testimony of Malaysia's family silenced the courtroom. When it was the turn of the witnesses to stand, a friend of Malaysia's sobbed. "She lived bravely. She did not deserve to die like this. Please give Malaysia justice." Those tears seemed to pierce the heavy atmosphere of the courtroom, making even the jury unable to sit still. After many days of intense debate, the final verdict was announced. Kendall Lyles was sentenced to 40 years in prison for murder. In the courtroom, a moment of heavy silence passed. Then there was crying, the sound of choking hugs. Malaysia's family clasped their hands, both in pain and relief. Finally, the person who took her life would no longer be free in society. However, that sentence could not bring Malaysia back. Many in the LGBTQ+ community believe that justice has only been partially served, because the more important thing is to change society so that no more Malaysia Booker has to suffer tragedy. They turned their pain into action. A series of organizations established funds named after Malaysia to support transgender women of color, a group that faces the highest risk of violence. On the walls of Dallas, street artists painted her portrait, long curly hair, radiant smile, a symbol of courage and pride. At a memorial service, Malaysia's mother stood before the crowd, her eyes red, but her voice firm. "My child is gone, but her story will live on. She will not be just a name in a forensic file. She will be a wake-up call, a guiding light for those who are afraid to be themselves." Today, when people mention Malaysia Booker, they remember not only a tragedy, but also a legacy, a reminder that justice lies not only in the court's judgment, but also in how society treats its most vulnerable. The story is over, but its echoes remain. In the flickering candlelight of memorial services, in the chants of "Justice for Malaysia," and in the hearts of those who continue to fight, her name is still called, like a flame that never goes out.